to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. And as promised, because this is October, the spookiest month of the year, there's my backgrounds. My backgrounds are going to be spooky backgrounds. Here, let me get out of the way so you guys can see it. There we go. Nice spooky background. And yes, it is, it's a great day in the neighborhood. Well, I don't know about that. Boy, could we have a party that is like as cohesive as the Democrats? I'm sorry. I'll get into that here in just a moment. Let me go ahead and get started by welcoming, of course, all of the Whiskey Warrior P1s who are out there, as well as anyone else who is watching for your very first time. Welcome to the program. As always, I do appreciate everyone that shows up on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and the MAGA Neanderthal miscreant deplorables over on Rumble. Or at least that's what 3 Chevy keeps tossing out there. Anyway, okay, so a lot has happened in the last 24 to 48 hours. And that is just, it is, well, it's history making, but not in a good way necessarily. Before I get into that, let me go ahead and show you tonight. I am drinking Buffalo Trace, Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey, and it is in my TGRN True Grit Roots Network glass with the rocks in the bottom, my whiskey stones in the bottom. And yeah, so speaking of them, if I can figure out where my cursor went, speaking of them, let's talk about them real quick. TGRN Blues. 11 blues lovers have come together to create this dedicated 24/7 blues channel from the True Grit Roots Network. Join the real Lady A. And I'm not kidding, by the way, guys. That is the real Lady A. She was the one, I don't know, I probably have said this, but I'm going to say it again anyway. She is the one that actually sued Lady Antebellum when they changed their name to Lady A. So yeah, she's great lady, just absolutely beautiful, and that kind of stuff. But anyway, back to the spot. The real Lady A, Gina Coleman from Misty Blues, Big Daddy Ray Hansen, Jeff Hayes, Holly Harris, Angela Easley, Vinnie Marini, Amber Burr-Hill, Ray Blueshound Brown, Memphis Mark, and Jonathan Oogie Richards, as they share the blues every week with original first-run shows from the TGRN Blues channel. Show calendars and more information is available at tgrn.net. Breaking boundaries for Authentic Roots Radio, True Grit Roots Network, tgrn.net, Austin, Texas. And of course, I am part owner in that endeavor. We had our first remote live, which went off without a hitch. Well, for the most part. But anyway, okay. So apparently you guys like this shirt. Do you like this better than the green one? Just to kind of toss that out there. Just if you like that, you know, anyway, okay. So there has been an incredible amount of stuff going on outside the in the House, and they call it the lower chamber of Congress. So you have the upper chamber, which is the Senate. You have the lower chamber, which is the House of Representatives. The House of Representatives has done something, in case you haven't heard the news, has done something historic. For the first time ever, a House Speaker has been removed from his or her post. Okay? So this is the very first time that a House Speaker has been removed from the post. Now, back in, I think, 1910, maybe 1910, they tried it, and yeah, it didn't work. So anyway, it just it's historic. I mean, it's a historic occasion for good and bad reasons, I guess. The main one, of course, being the fact that this has now thrown the entire House of Representatives into, as if they needed any more of a reason for this, but it's thrown them into a complete whirlwind, because now not only do they have to deal with the fact that a 45-day continuing resolution just got passed, meaning that, which ends right before Thanksgiving, by the way. Now they have to contend with electing a new Speaker of the House. And, you know, the political pundits, and by political pundits, I mean, you've got, you know, Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, Dan Bongino, Sean Hannity. They are all split, kind of, in agreement on this in terms of how it was done. Now, Mark Levin is absolutely livid over the fact that is absolutely livid out of the fact that Matt Gaetz has done this, especially because of the fact that apparently the caucus, who was essentially the 8 Republicans that got together to join with the Democrats to oust the Speaker, they ended up where I don't understand where these people, I mean, I'm sorry. I don't understand where these people are coming from. Okay. They had a bill in front of them. In the front of the House that would have cut 30% of spending, of discretionary spending. And they didn't vote for it. They had a bill, another bill put up in front of them that would have done essentially an 8% decrease in discretionary spending. They said no to that. And for a group of individuals who is complaining about the fact that we are $33 trillion in debt and we have a $2.2 trillion deficit year over year. It's a mess. I just don't understand where these people are coming from. They talk about being conservatives and being fiscally conservative, but yet they won't vote on, at least some of them, they wouldn't vote on what they, on the money aspects. I mean, trying to cut things back. It just doesn't make sense to me. Now, if you recall, when McCarthy was up for Speaker, first of all, it took 15 rounds for them to actually get him elected, number one. But the second thing is that from my perspective, I said that he wasn't, in my opinion, wasn't a good choice for being speaker. We knew that he was essentially borderline rhino. I mean, he comes from California. Give me a break. He's a Republican from California. That's his, now he claims to be a Reagan Republican. Anyway, the thing about it is, though, is that these people have gone and, you know, they're not for us. They never have. They're not for us. I mean, they're not for the people. They're for, and this goes for any of them. This is part of the reason why I don't belong necessarily to a political party, because I don't necessarily believe that you should be putting party over individual responsibility and individual, individual choices, which, some people argue it. But the fact of the matter is that these people are essentially, especially some of the ones that have been there for a very long time, they're the ones that are, trying to keep their jobs, trying to keep their seats, which is one of the reasons why I am actually for limiting, for term limits. Now, term limits are supposed to be voting, but as of now, we have people who are just voting name recognition and are not paying attention to what's going on. And so they're going ahead and just, voting in whoever it is. But that being the case, McCarthy, in order to try and get now here's another thing too. Now this is another thing that the small contingent of Republicans brought up. And it basically means, or essentially what they were arguing about is this continuing resolutions and omnibus spending. Now, for those of you that don't quite understand those words and the meaning behind them, continuing resolutions are basically just kicking the can down the road. They're keeping, when you do a continuing resolution, they're essentially going and saying, okay, we are going to continue our current spending at current spending levels, and we're just going to kick the can down the road when it comes to actually doing something for the when they're actually doing something for like the budget or figuring that out. The other thing is that you have the omnibus bills, which omnibus bills are sort of like Nancy Pelosi's comments that she made, where we have to pass the bill in order to find out what's in it. It doesn't make sense to run the government that way. Now, the omnibus bills also have just basically everything thrown into it. And because of the fact that when they do an omnibus bill, they generally try to push it through as fast as possible, then the representatives don't have enough time to actually dig into and go through line by line to see what the money is being spent on. Now, one of the things that the contingent argued against is the fact that when McCarthy was brought in as Speaker of the House originally, that one of the things that he would work on was essentially bringing single subject bills back, meaning that you wouldn't be able to have, multiple like pork added on afterward. It essentially would be that the bill would be a single subject. And I 100% agree with this. I personally think that that is essentially crucial in my mind, because how can anyone go through and try and pass something without reading it. And that's the thing that I just don't understand, how we can sit here and in good faith, how our representatives could actually sit here and say, we need to have time to read these bills to understand what the money is that we're spending and where it's going and so on and so forth. Now, this is a common problem that we've had with government. Government by itself is the absolute worst at being very, shall we say, judicious with the spending of the money. And so, the thing about it is that if we're going to elect people, Milton Friedman said it best. He was talking about the whole third-party payer system, which, just so you understand, and I'm going to try and paraphrase what he said, but do yourself a favor, go out and look up the internet. I'm sure it's out on YouTube, where Milton Friedman was talking about the third-party payer system that government is. What happens is, in a first-party payer system, I essentially am the one paying for the service. So I get to judge whether or not the service was up to my standards, whether or not the money that I'm paying was worth it. And so therefore, it's my money too. So therefore I am the most responsible for how these things, how the money is spent. Okay. So in other words, I get to be very frugal with my money and try to get the greatest service or product off of how much money I am spending. Okay. Now, the two-party payer system is where I am the receiver of the services, but I'm not the one paying. That's somebody else. And so there's a vested interest in that other person in terms of being able to sit there and make sure that the money is paid frugally. But they don't necessarily care about the level of service. They just care about how much money they're putting out for whatever said service is. So, I care about the service, but I'm not the one paying. So I have no leverage in that particular scenario. The third-party payer system is even worse. That's where I am receiving the service and somebody else is paying out the money. Not like the two-party, but a third party who is totally disinterested in the situation. It's not even their money. See, in the two-party payer system, I missed that, but in the two-party payer system, the second party, it's their money. In the third-party payer system, it's not their money, and they're not receiving the services, so they don't really care. They have literally no vested interest in making sure that not only is the services correct, but the money itself is being spent correctly. So this is where government lives, is in that third-party system. And so third-party payer is really the most inefficient and in terms of money and services and so on and so forth, because the third-party payer, it's not their money. They're gathering it from somebody else. They don't care. It's somebody else's money. And then you have, they don't care what the services are because it's not their money. So who the hell cares, of how much money I pay for what kind of crappy service I get? And this is part of the problem. This is where you have the whole idea of a third-party payer system. Well, that's essentially government in and of itself in a nutshell. And what's even worse is when you have representatives who we are supposed to be electing to represent us and act as though it is their money. They are tossing that to the wind. And so Yeah, sorry, I got a problem here with this. Yeah, you're gone. Goodbye. Yeah, so occasionally we get trolls in the Rumble chat now for whatever reason, but I killed them. Anyway, okay, so moving on. So where was I? Oh, the third party payer system, right? So the third party payer system is the worst, and that's what our government is in. And we don't even have representatives who even care about standing up to it, because of the fact that it's not their money. And so it's not their situation to be able to, correct the services and so on and so forth. This is part of the reason why there's so much fraud whenever you have government programs. And this is part of the reason too why private entities are so much better at government programs as well. Well, now what we have is we have a situation in the House of Representatives where we have budgets coming up, and we have a big budget argument coming up. We've got that 45-day continuing resolution, which, of course, only kept the doors of the government open for a short period of time. And so now they're going to have to do all of this negotiation at the same time being distracted by the speakership, the vacation of, not vacation as in party, but vacating the speakership's chair. And so this is oh boy, this is going to get really interesting, to be completely, open and clear with you. It's going to get very interesting, but let's go ahead and take a look at what is going on within the House of Representatives right now. So, McCarthy is out, and House Republicans now have to figure out what their move is. Now, the sad part about this is that 8 Republicans joined with Democrats. Now, we know that the Democrats are kind of like the hive mind. There's 208 Democrat representatives. One of them is from my state. One of them is my rep, which is why whenever somebody puts out a call to, call and talk to my representative, I know it's going to fall on deaf ears. But 208 exist in the House of Representatives. The rest of the 435 members are the Republicans. And so all it took was 8 Republicans to join with the Democrats in order to boot McCarthy out of the speakership. So now we have to figure out, or the House, I should say, has to figure out what in the heck they're doing. Now, one thing that I did not know, which this is interesting, but after September 11th in 2001, internally, in its internal operations, the House created a secretive position called the House Speaker pro tempore, which essentially is, if something happens to the Speaker of the House, this person steps in as the interim. Now, that individual was named by McCarthy and is kept secretive so that, obviously any of our enemies can't go and target them. Okay. But North Carolina Representative Patrick McHenry is serving as active speaker. Now, yeah, I think I'm sorry, I might have misspoke. I think it's actually just the identity that remains secret. Not that the fact that there is another one, it's just the identity that remains secret. So I could be wrong on that. But anyway, the point is that Patrick McHenry, Representative McHenry, has sent the House home for the rest of the week. So we're losing, tonight, tomorrow, and Friday, okay, for the rest of the week. But he has highly encouraged the caucuses to get together, in particular the Republican caucuses, in order to present a new speaker when they reconvene on Monday. Now, the thing about this is that for a while there, it was sort of questionable as to who was going to step in. And that's where a lot of the Republican or the conservative pundits have been asking, okay, Matt Gaetz in particular, he ousted the speaker. It's like, okay, so who do you recommend coming in? And he didn't really have any kind of an answer whenever asked that question. And so, yeah, so they've, obviously the Republicans have to figure out who they're going to nominate as their next speaker. Well, it turns out that we actually have a couple people that popped in and threw their hat in the ring. One of them, so the conference or the candidate forum. Yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to tell you, is that the other thing that McHenry put in was he basically said that they're going to hold a speaker candidate forum on Tuesday and then possibly vote on Wednesday to get the new speaker put into play. And so Kevin McCarthy, of course, while he could actually run for speaker again, and I think that actually might have been part of the Democrats' plan, as Dan Mangino pointed out today on his. But I think that he made a good choice, to be honest with you. I personally am sort of impressed that he decided that he wasn't going to run following his removal, even though it was a narrow vote. I do actually think he probably could potentially have gotten back in as speaker had he pushed it. But at least for right now, he is saying that he's not going to run for the speaker again. Now, that being said, we have a couple of possibilities. The first one is House Majority Leader Steve Scalise. Now, Steve Scalise has been fighting blood cancer, I believe. I think it's blood cancer, but he's been having some health issues. And yeah, so Gaetz floated this individual, floated Steve Scalise, and he would actually be I could see he would be a little bit more conservative than what McCarthy was. And if you recall, during the original vote, the 15 rounds of voting that it took to get them to get a House Speaker in the first place, Steve Scalise's name was thrown in the hat multiple times. But he didn't want it then. And so now he's throwing his hat in, I think probably because of the fact that he just, the Republican Party needs to get their crap together in order to get this done. And apparently House Majority Whip, who is the second person, Tom Emmer, has endorsed him and will likely run for the House Majority Leader position. And Representative Guy Reschenthaler from Pennsylvania will try to go for the Majority Whip position. But Steve Scalise is going to have an opponent in Jim Jordan. So Jim Jordan has thrown his hat in the ring, and Jordan is the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Now, this one in particular would be a bit more difficult to swallow. Now, I'm not entirely sure. I have to check this, but I'm not entirely sure if he can be both a chairman as well as speaker. I would have to look, because it's not a constitutional kind of thing. I would have to look at their House rules as to whether or not it was going to be a bit of a situation. But Jim Jordan would definitely be to the right of Steve Scalise. Now, that being said, obviously, we're going to have a bit of a challenge because, of course, all the Democrats, if you recall, on those 15 rounds, that those Democrats, all of them, will more than likely put up Hakeem Jeffries as Speaker of the House. And, of course, like the Borg and everything else, which this, I have to give the Democrats at least a little bit of respect for this, because this is something that the Republicans can't seem to get. And this whole incident kind of demonstrates this, okay? But the Republican Party has factions within it, just like the Democrat Party has factions in it. But the one thing that the Democrats do very consistently is that no matter what, they all vote against Republicans. And so they will all, in like hive mind fashion, they will have their 208 votes go behind whoever they decide they want to put up as Speaker. Now, the chances of Hakeem Jeffries becoming Speaker are pretty slim, but the chance is there. If 8 Republicans can join with the Democrats to get rid of McCarthy, it wouldn't surprise me any, to be honest with you, if some of those Republicans side with the Democrats to get somebody who, just for spite, to put up Hakeem Jeffries. Now, all that is needed is a simple majority in the, which is 218 votes. Okay. And so if we have a decent candidate get put up, all we need is 217 or 218 votes in order to have the majority for the Speaker. But this requires, because of our narrow margin, this requires a concerted effort, okay, from the Republican Party to all join together. And as of right now, based on this particular incident, especially Matt Gaetz, who is essentially now public enemy number one for the Republicans, they essentially are fractionalized again, just like they always seem to be. And even though, again, I have to give them credit, even though the Democrats are fractionalized oftentimes, as soon as an enemy that is outside of the party, i.e. a Republican or a conservative or something, they all lockstep together and stand right up and get them together. Okay. So this is a demonstration of how the Republican Party really has its work cut out for them to try and get the party unified. And this is a bit of a precursor, believe it or not, a precursor to the 2024 election and a bit of a representation of what happened in 2020. See, the Republican Party is consistently fractured. And this is part of the problem that we have, or part of the challenges, I should say, that we have in going up against a hive-like mind Borg type, Star Trek Borg type entity in the Democrats. Now, a couple of episodes ago, I made a comment about how the candidate for president on the Republican Party side, if it turned out to not be Trump, okay, now keep in mind, just remember, it's Trump's, right now, it's Trump's to lose, okay? But the the whole thing about the 2024 election is not necessarily who is going to be president from the Republican side. It's literally, can we beat the Democrats? Because we are in a position right now in 2024, we have to beat the Democrats. We cannot sit here and allow the Democrats to continue. Our country is in complete turmoil. We are probably in, I would consider it, at least in the last probably 40 years, closest to a destruction of our constitutional republic. Not that we have really had one in the last 40 years, to be honest with you, but we are closer to the destruction of the constitutional republic today than we have been in many, many, many years. And so, yeah, this is part of the reason why I'm saying the Republicans have to keep in mind that although we may have a infighting within our own ranks, there is a bigger danger and a bigger enemy to the constitutional republic that needs to get put down as soon as possible. Okay. That being said, again, just to reiterate, it's Trump's nomination to lose right now, which, speaking of that, if you recall too, that in the first days after retaking the slim majority in the House and the 15 votes, there was another person that was voted in. Now, that was nominated to be voted in. Now, I have to make this completely clear, okay? And this is a constitutional thing. But this is a constitutional thing. The Speaker of the House does not need to be a member of the House of Representatives. Constitutionally, it does not matter. The Speaker of the House does not need to be a member of the House of Representatives. Now, that being said, tradition has been consistent in the fact that the Speaker has continually been from the House of Representatives, but they don't have to be. And so, once again, here's an opportunity for outside forces to come into play for the first time in history. And here we go, Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a possibility. Now, he actually, according to this Daily Wire piece, suggests that he's open to filling the vacant House Speaker position. Now, even though he suggested it, okay, we're really going to have to watch this closely, because I know that Donald Trump, I don't think Donald Trump would actually do it. Donald Trump wants president. Donald Trump he's ahead in the Republican polling. He knows that he's got the or at least he should by now know that he's got the nomination pretty close to being locked up. And so realistically, I don't think that he would do it unless he was able to be the interim speaker for the time being before the presidential election. But let's face it. I mean, the man, as much of a Energizer Bunny as we've seen him, he pretty much has, he's got plenty on his plate. He was in his civil trial. He, sitting there, he's got his indictments coming down. He's got campaigning to do. Yeah, he just doesn't have the time. I mean, honestly, he doesn't have the time here for this. And so even though he sort of suggested it, he did also say that he wants what's best for the country. This is his quote. a lot of people have been calling me about becoming speaker. All I can say is we'll do whatever's best for the country and for the Republican Party. But he does say further down that his sole focus is on being president, and quite honestly, with actually making America great again, he added, because we are living in a country in decline. This is a country that is failing badly. We are not respected in the world. Interest rates are through the roof. Taxes are through the roof. Inflation is horrible. And all of those things are very, very true. So my guess is that he, even though he may have been asked, he probably is going to, or probably would turn it down, just because of the fact that, you know, and by the way, Jim Jordan has actually been asked that as well. Has been asked about Trump being, the interim Speaker of the House. And he said that he was like, well, he goes, he would be a good one, but I think that he needs to be president. So even though there's been some suggestion about it, it's kind of questionable at best if he would even take it up. I don't think he would. I honestly don't think he would. I think it would be actually a bad decision and bad move on his part to do that. But then again, I've also been wrong on a lot of moves. So, I mean, what makes sense doesn't necessarily fit within some of these people. Like I said, that Ron DeSantis shouldn't jump in the race, and yet he went ahead and did it because he was listening to some other people. You know, he should have waited till 2028. But anyway, common sense and logic apparently isn't as prevalent in today's world than this. But apparently there's also some other Republicans in the House that are supporting Trump for Speaker, the typical ones. Marjorie Taylor Greene is an example. You have, let's see, who else was in here? Rudy Giuliani kind of mentioned it, which, whatever. Marjorie Taylor Greene, I already mentioned. Troy Niels mentioned it. He's a Texas Republican. And then there was also Jim Jordan, who, of course, says, like I told you, his quote is, I don't know, he'd be great, but I want Donald Trump to be the next president of the United States. That's where we need him, at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. If he wants to be a speaker, then that's fine too, he told Fox News. So, yeah, anyway. So yeah, honestly, even though this is a big kind of thing, to try and potentially bring Donald Trump in, which again, if that were to happen, that opens up all kinds of situations that I've brought up before on this program, where you could have, Joe Biden get impeached, VP Harris get impeached as well. And then you end up with both of them getting kicked out. I know it's a long shot with the Senate, the way the Senate is made up right now, but you could get both of them kicked out and we could end up with Donald Trump in the office as president again for at least however long it would be left by the time the impeachment trials came out. And then he could run and be president, be elected president again. But anyway, that's just, it's just odd. So anyway, I personally think that Donald Trump is in the position where he needs to be. And, that's kind of it. Now, there is one Democrat in particular who has weighed in on this entire situation. Now, anytime, and this is a, what do you call it? This is kind of a Mark K-ism thing, that whenever the Democrats are happy, you shouldn't be. And when they're unhappy, then you should be happy as a conservative. Okay. But here's the thing. Whenever a Democrat supports a Republican, you need to be cautious and very critical of that individual's thoughts, because you cannot sit here and say that a Democrat has your best interest at heart. They keep talking about it. Okay. They keep talking about it, but they are not for the people. They are for one thing and one thing only, and that is consolidation of Democrat power. That's why they work together in a hive mind kind of fashion. They may have infighting, but they're kind of like a really tight-knit family. They may have infighting within themselves, but the minute that an outside source of enemy combatant joins in, then they all turn on that individual. And so this is why we have this kind of a situation here where I'm a little cautious over this. And especially from this Democrat. So the Daily Wire reported that this gentleman here, I've seen him before, I can't remember right off the top, James Clyburn, okay, he's the assistant Democrat leader in the House. He shared a brief list on an appearance of MSNBC where he said that he, and this is the quote, "There are people on both sides that could do this. I think that they're a leader. I know he's having some health problems, but Steve Scalise is a great guy." Now, this is, I'm just saying, when you have a Democrat stand up and say that Steve Scalise is a great guy, and I don't know Steve Scalise personally. I mean, obviously, I don't know that much about him because I haven't really paid much attention to him. But the fact of the matter is that Steve Scalise being backed by a Democrat, while that may sound good from a possibility of, making sure that a Republican gets in as speaker, I personally think that what we need to do is we need to move more right. So to say that Steve Scalise is a good choice, a great guy from a Democrat, that makes me wonder if Steve Scalise is really all that wonderful when you're dealing with these. So this is leaning more and more toward a Jim Jordan as an example. Now, Clyburn also suggested one other name, which hasn't come up, which is Tom Cole, who's a Republican from Oklahoma. And he's chairman of the House Rules Committee at this point. And Clyburn says, I think that Cole would be a sort of the kind of tone that we would like to see. Okay, folks, that's code for we can manipulate him into doing what we want. So this is not a rousing endorsement in my position. This is not a rousing endorsement for Steve Scalise or this other guy, Tom Cole, to be completely honest, in both cases. But we're going to have to wait a few days to figure it out. And, yeah, we'll see what ends up happening. I'm just, again, I personally think that none of these people, I only know of a few people like Chip Roy, who's really, in my opinion, really good. Jim Jordan's really good. But the really good Republicans or conservative Republicans are in the minority right now, no matter what, whether it's a Democrat, obviously Democrats, none of them are good. And Republican rhinos are really all that great either. And by the way, according to a source that I saw, Mitch McConnell is also backing Steve Scalise, I believe. And so Steve Scalise is a little question. And it, yeah. And yes, Buddy, I agree with you here. Buddy points out over on Rumble, it's time for the nice guys is over. USA needs MAGA power and hardness. And you are correct. I agree with you. Cutesy time is over. It's time to stand, make a stand. You cannot sit here. I've said it before and I'll say it again. You cannot compromise with Democrats anymore. The last, 40 or 50 years should have presented themselves enough, if you have a long enough memory, to be able to understand that these people, the Democrats in particular, the leftist Democrats for sure, they all need to understand that, we can't compromise with these folks anymore. We just can't. It's not possible. Not possible. All right. Let me tell you, if you enjoy the program, take a second of a break here. If you enjoy the program and would love to wear a Whiskey Musings logo, or possibly my saying, when I drink, I think, you can check it out at the Whiskey Musings store. Go to store.whiskeymusings.online and you will find a fantastic selection of logoed t-shirts, tank tops, all kinds of logoed gear as well as mottoed gear as well. You can have it on your coffee cups. You can have my motto or logo on your coffee cup. You can have it on pint glasses, water bottles, just all kinds of things. I've even got an apron. I had to get an apron. And no, sorry, 3 Chevy, no Merkins. Okay. But t-shirts, coffee mugs, there's all kinds of tank tops, there's sweatshirts, there's hoodies. There's even jogging pants, exercise pants for the ladies as well as the men. There's a bunch of them. Head on over to store.whiskeymusings.online. That's store.whiskeymusings.online. And of course, you purchase something there and I and the show will receive a small bit of the proceeds from there. We also have some bags. I mean, you don't have to get, like, if you want to take maybe a gym bag or something like that. I've got duffel bags. I've got backpacks. There's a bunch of stuff. Just head on over to store.whiskeymusings.online and take a look. Hey, you can even rock a fanny pack too. I forgot about those. But head on over to store.whiskeymusings.online and you can check out all of the wonderful things that I have that is both logo as well as motto gear. And of course, support the show in the process. That's store.whiskeymusings.online. And I would definitely appreciate that. For sure. All right. So let's take a step out of the does the fanny pack make up for the Merkin? Coco Dominky says over on Rumble. No. Anyway. All right. So no. So I caught an interesting article in the Epic Times. So, the whole thing with the climate and climate change and everything else. They keep calling it, especially the Democrats, Joe Biden, the energy secretary, Granholm, they all are saying it's 100% settled science. It's 100% settled science. And I got to tell you, it's not really all that settled. But once again, the climate emergency is back. This time they're not talking about the heat, though, which is amazing. They're not talking about the heat on this one. But according to this piece in Breitbart, The Guardian put out a piece that is it's a UK-based newspaper, by the way, The Guardian. But they made the remarkable assertion that rainstorms are now 20% wetter than they used to be. And that's due to climate change. Now, 20% wetter. Yeah, anyway, so apparently New York City's recent storm and accompanying flooding, wow, that's a heck of a tongue twister there, show the, quote, unmistakable influence of the climate crisis, The Guardian contended on Monday, warning that the city may not be prepared for severe climate shocks. They claim the type of storm seen last Friday is now 10 to 20% wetter than it would have been in the previous century because of climate change. And they are citing some sort of new rapid attribution study. So, yeah. Folks, they keep claiming the climate change is real and that it's settled science and so on and so forth. Well, according to this piece, which is in the Epoch Times, meteorologists and scientists explain why there is no climate emergency. Okay. Which it boils down to essentially flawed modeling and overblown rhetoric are drowning out the scientific reality for the sake of money and power, climate experts say. Now, you can go and read through this article, which I would encourage you to do so, but it really boils down to this. There's roughly 1,800 scientists and informed professionals that stated that there is no climate emergency and that the alarmist messaging being pushed by all of the global elites is purely political. And they all stated that when they signed the Global Climate Intelligence Group's World Climate Declaration. Now, they are claiming, of course, which we all know this, but they are claiming that the climate science needs to be less political. Now, climate science is definitely, science is the key word in that, climate science. When you apply the scientific method, you put up a hypothesis, then you test that hypothesis, and then you draw your conclusions from those tests. You also turn things around and you try to retest and retest and retest. In fact, many scientific theories that are out there have yet to be 100% proven as fact. And so for them, for the left in particular, to say that the science is completely settled is a little bit suspect by itself. That being said, the group, which it claims to be an independent climate watchdog, was founded in 2019 by a professor of geophysics, Gus Burkhout, and science journalist Marcel Crook. And according to the group's website, its objective is to generate knowledge and understanding of all the causes and effects of climate change, as well as the effects of climate policy. Now, the key thing that all climate alarmists talk about is the CO2 levels within the atmosphere. And what they forget to, well, what they try to point to is they try to attribute an essential raise in CO2 levels to human beings. Where they fall flat, though, is they neglect to properly account for several key factors that are literally unpredictable and unmeasurable as a part of their supposed science that they are trying to put forth. Not to mention the fact, but as I learned in programming classes when I was learning about computer programming, you have this thing known as garbage in, garbage out. When you put garbage into any kind of an equation, when you start with garbage, you get garbage coming out of it. The quality of the data and the information that you put in has to be clean and clear in order for the results to actually be correct. And this is, this is true multiple times, but unfortunately these climate models that they keep claiming, like the temperature is going to rise and we're getting hotter and so on and so forth, all of these models that they are using and all of this data that they are using is essentially flawed according to this group. Now, many of these 1,800 people are signatories include Nobel laureates, theoretical physicists, meteorologists, professors, and environmental scientists worldwide. And when a select few, so the Epoch Times went and asked a select few of them why they signed the declaration, they basically all stated a variation that the climate emergency is a farce. Let me say that again, that the climate emergency is a farce, and that statement is true. Okay. They are claiming that the Earth has warmed about 2 degrees Fahrenheit since the end of the Little Ice Age, which was around 1850. But that hardly constitutes an emergency or even a crisis, since the planet has even been warmer in the last few millennia, according to Ralph Alexander, a retired physicist and author of the website Science Under Attack. And he told this to the Epoch Times. There's plenty of evidence that average temperatures were higher during the so-called medieval warm period, which was centered around the year 1000. The Roman warm period, when grapes and citrus fruits were actually grown in what is now much colder Britain, and in the early Holocene after the last regular ice age ended. And of course, he claims unequivocally that the climate emergency is fiction. So, yeah, you've got to take a look at this. You really have to read this article. It doesn't get really deep in the science necessarily, but I'm just telling you, you got to read this. This is a perfect piece to bring up in front of your liberal friends who keep saying the science is settled and that climate change is real. And this is the key, that human-based influenced climate change is real. Okay. And that we are in some sort of an emergency here, that we have to take drastic measures and so on and so forth. So this is a great article. Yeah. And they also base this on measurements and stuff that have only taken in the last, 100 years or so, as Coco Domingue points out over on Rumble. And then Sharon Lindsay over on Facebook, got to give my Facebook peeps at least something. He says, what's fiction is that paying taxes will change the climate. It's, that statement is so true. The fact that whether or not climate change is real or not, and whether or not there's a climate emergency, that's a fact-based conversation that we can have. But the idea that's being pushed by the politicos that are out there is that by throwing money at it, we can fix it. And again, that goes back to my original segment where I was telling you about the third-party payer system. Yeah, we can throw money at it, but they don't care where the money goes. They don't care how well the money is spent, and so on and so forth. So, yeah. Oh, this is just crazy. All right. Well, I don't know if anybody noticed. I'm sure you did, because, you know, flags are, as far as I know, they're still at half-mast. The flags were lowered to half-mast because of the fact that Senator Dianne Feinstein left this world at age 90. And Gavin Newsom, in accordance with the way that that their state runs, has the ability to appoint a senator to replace. And the first thing that, of course, leftist Gavin Newsom pulls out is that he will appoint a black woman to the position. Well, he selected that woman, and he essentially has found what he considers to be a historic member of the Senate. This from the Daily Wire. LaFonza Butler became California's newest U.S. Senator this week on Tuesday, succeeding the late Dianne Feinstein. So she is a black woman who is also gay. And so I know this is common throughout the Democrats, no matter who it is. This is common throughout the Democrats. They essentially will check the intersectional boxes on a list, and that is not any kind of way to choose your representatives or anybody for that matter. I mean, if I'm going in for open heart surgery, I am going to want the best person, the best open heart surgeon who's out there. And I frankly don't care what intersectional boxes they check, as long as they are more than competent in doing the job. But we'll have to see if this person is any better than what Feinstein was at the age of 90 in that location. But of course, you know, all of the Democrats applauded and were extremely happy about this, and so on and so forth. Like Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Alex Padilla, they, you know, joined her while she was being sworn in, and so on and so forth. So, and of course, you know, Vice President Harris had to go and talk about it, or had to go and applaud her as well, because that's just the way they roll. Now, she obviously starts off immediately with some controversy. So what's the controversy? Well, apparently this individual, which, by the way, she's been scrubbing a lot of this from her social media. She's trying to cover this up, which is typical for a Democrat, to be honest with you. It's just nothing unusual. Apparently, LaFonza Butler is the president of a radical abortion group, Emily's List. She also is supposedly an individual who represents, or has been, the president of a union, which that by itself isn't necessarily something that would not, disqualify her necessarily. But the biggest thing, of course, is the fact that despite having a house in California, she's actually a resident of Maryland and would have to re-register to vote in California. According to FEC filings, which was popped up by this Rob Pyers on Hat Tip to him, by the way, over on X, formerly known as Twitter, she listed herself as a resident of Silver Springs, Maryland, as recently as 31 days ago at the time this was posted. So we actually have a senator now. Now, if you recall in the Pennsylvania Senate race, she essentially, or she is doing essentially what they were accusing Dr. Oz of doing, which is being a carpetbagger. Now, apparently, she's been living in Maryland for quite some time, even though she owns a house in California. She hasn't been there. Something similar to what like Liz Cheney was doing with Wyoming, and some of those kinds of places, where they spend more of their time in D.C. and less time in their state. Now, this is potentially this is literally a problem. For these people. This is literally a problem as to why these people are so out of touch with their constituents. They don't spend time in front of their constituents. And I honestly think that the further that they go down the path, meaning that the more times they get reelected, the less time they spend in their home states. This is part of the reason why a term limit suggestion would be in play. However, trying to get the entire Congress to vote for term limits is going to be a problem. Now, constitutional wise, this brings up some questions because of the fact that as a part of the Constitution, they have to be a resident of the state in which they are representing. So don't be surprised if some of this comes back on her in the near future. I honestly believe that there might be somebody out there who is going to potentially bring this up and maybe even sue in California. If they were smart, they would do it. But of course, we're talking about California, the liberal den of iniquity over there on what they consider the left coast. But anyway, she apparently lives, again, she doesn't live in California. So we'll have to see what happens here. But yeah. This is going to be kind of interesting. And she also apparently put out a statement where she says that she is honored to accept, and this is also on X, she is honored to accept Governor Newsom's nomination for the U.S. to be the U.S. Senator for a state I have made my home and honored by his trust in me to serve the people of California and this great nation. Now, yeah, so I would certainly hope that there might be somebody out there who is potentially a conservative, not necessarily a Republican, but a conservative who might want to challenge this in court, because that would be, that would be interesting to see. I'd love to see that. But I honestly don't think it's going to happen because, again, this is California. So now let's move on to my other favorite subject, Joe Biden. So because of the continuing resolution and the the Ukraine funding being basically up on the chopping block. So this, obviously sorry, I was looking at the chat here, trying to catch up a little bit. But the Biden administration, of course, started scrambling, according to Breitbart here. The Biden administration scrambling to assure allies that Ukraine aid will continue. A lot of this is stemming from the idea that, or from the proposed initiatives that were taking Ukraine out of it. And yeah, so we're going to see, I mean, obviously the American people, for the most part, according to polls that I'm seeing, there's sort of mixed results, but they're starting to bend a little bit more toward the idea that Ukraine itself, we need to stop sending money to Ukraine. And of course, Joe Biden and the Biden administration keep sending them money. So, the point here is that this is a warning message, I think, to the Biden administration and also to Ukraine and Zelensky, that our patience is going to, meaning the government's patience, is eventually going to get challenged here. But again, this is what happens with American money. We've sent all of our taxes here, and we send our taxes in, and they're not spending it on American people. They're not spending it on American interests. The only interest that we have in Ukraine, at least from several people who seem to be in the know, is trying to cover up, or at least prevent, Ukraine from ousting or outing potentially Joe Biden. According to Dan Bongino, that's kind of the case. And given the fact that the whole Burisma thing, the Hunter Biden laptop, the money that was funneled from, Joe Biden, or to Joe Biden through Hunter and his various businesses across the globe, it wouldn't surprise me any that they're trying to cover this up, that there might be some serious blackmail that could be going on here. Okay. We also have Biden trying desperately to keep a promise that keeps getting shot down. Okay. So Biden extends $9 billion more of student debt relief to 125,000 borrowers. Now, he announced this last Wednesday, or no, today. He announced it today, that there would be new student debt loan relief. Now, here's the thing, okay? If I had $10 in my hand, $10 cash, and I had borrowed that from a friend of mine, okay? So I borrowed that $10 from a friend of mine. And I took that $10 and I basically said, and I basically loaned that money out to, another friend of a friend. Okay. And then then I looked at that person and I said, hey, you know what? That $10 that I gave you, you don't have to pay me back. Our original agreement was you would pay me back with interest. Okay. But you don't have to pay me back anymore. All right. Then who do you think the burden is on where that money came from? I don't have the money because it wasn't my money to begin with. The person that I borrowed it from is now out $10 plus interest, by the way, if you completely absolve a loan. And what's even worse is the idea. Now, I've been hit on social media multiple times on this. Many people have been saying these loans that are going out, it's basically absolving the interest on the loan. Well, that's the payment for borrowing the money. Because if I hand you money, if I give you money that's mine, I don't have it available for me to do anything. So for me to have that money, to be able to utilize that money or gain something from that money, I have to have it available to me. If I hand it over to somebody else as a loan, I expect to have that money brought back to me within a certain period of time. Now, there are such things as no interest loans, but that's not what this is. These people who are getting this student debt relief, the burden of that money and any money that is coming in would essentially be a burden on the federal government and the taxpayers. Where do you think our deficit, some of our deficit, is coming from here? We are $33 trillion in debt. We are on the verge, with the current interest rates being what they are, to have it to where our interest rate is going to be higher. The total amount of money that we spend in interest is going to be higher than what we spend in our national defense, part of the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act. So I just don't see where somebody can look at this and go, well, that's fair to the payer, but it's not fair to the payee. It's not fair to the American taxpayer who loaned that money out in the first place. So I'm confused as to where this, believe me when I say this, there is no such thing as free. Somebody pays somewhere, whether it's the person who created the product or the person who sells the product because they purchased it from the person who created it, or whatever. This is nothing. This is not, I mean, Biden is essentially absolving something that he shouldn't be absolving because of the fact that the Constitution of the United States puts the power of the purse directly in the hands of Congress. Congress has the power of the purse. This is not Biden's opportunity. So it's going to be interesting to see if this gets challenged in court as well, which, honestly, it should. It should. So anyway, yeah. So it should be. It should be challenged in court, and I hope that it would. All right. So this next article is kind of interesting, not surprising to me, but then again, I also, kind of watch this stuff. But this next article is kind of interesting to me, and it gives us a indication as to where we may be heading, unfortunately. And that is, this is an opinion piece that showed up in Newsweek by Brad Palumbo, who actually is a co-founder of Based Politics. If you've ever seen that website, he also runs Dan Bongino's Bongino Report too. But apparently, a new poll out from, the Buckley Institute surveyed some students at four-year colleges, and the results are alarming. I would say so. Young Americans, so this is Gen Z. Okay, so young Americans are turning their backs on basic American principles of free speech, tolerance, and due process in a way that's so drastic it genuinely endangers the future of our political order. This is why I'm saying this right here is one of the reasons why I am saying that 2024 is so important for this. Okay. And apparently, according to the poll, it's all only accelerating. So the Buckley Institute has conducted this poll for 9 years. And yet this year, for the first time ever, more students support shouting down speakers they disagree with than oppose this kind of mob censorship. In another first, according to the article, or according to the opinion piece, I should say, a whopping 51% of students support speech codes, which essentially is speech rules to keep people from from questioning things. Okay. Now, what's more out of this article, or out of this polling, is that 46% of students now believe that offensive opinions should get other students reported to the university administration. And more than 50% of students literally believe certain topics should actually be banned from being debated on campus. So, and Gen Z is supposedly, Gen Z is saying that a whopping 45% of students out of Gen Z told pollsters that it is justified. Now, this is really what's scary. This is justified to use physical violence to prevent people from expressing what they consider hate speech or making racially charged comments. This radical un-American idea is only becoming more popular. So back in 2017, for an example, only 30% of the students supported this same proposition. So from 2017 to 2023, we've increased by 15%. This is scary. This is scary, folks. And this is part of the reason why the Democrats have done such a fantastic job. The leftists, the communist, Marxist, have done such a fantastic job taking over our educational institutions. And this is also part of the reason why I saw an article the other day where they were talking about the fact that homeschooling is up because adults, parents, are starting to see this trend and see it as a negative for this. And so, I mean, I'll be completely honest, I'm kind of glad that my kids are on their way out. And I definitely do not blame them if they decide not to have children of their own, considering the world that we are potentially going to live in. And this is sad. This is really, really sad. And this is part of the reason why I'm saying 2024 election, there is so much on the ballot that we cannot afford to allow the Democrats to continue their reign. And this is why I am saying that the Republicans, believe it or not, the Republicans need to coalesce more. We need to have a concise front to be able to beat the Democrats and reverse, in the hopes, I should say, of reversing this very, very disturbing trend, especially when it comes to the kids. Okay. All right. So that is my final Whiskey Musings thought of the evening. I have a special guest slated for Saturday. We'll see if it comes true. I don't want to announce who it is. Not going to tell you. This is the tease. I'm teasing this. So you got to come back Saturday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on the Whiskey Musings broadcast in order to find out who my special guest is. But I promise you, if I can get that person, if we can work out all the details and I can get this person, you're going to be excited, especially those who will know who he is when he comes. So, do me a favor. If you enjoy the program, if you like what I do, head on over to Rumble, sign up for an account. It is free. And make sure you head on over to the Whiskey Musings Broadcast channel and hit that green follow button. We will see you Saturday, and hopefully you'll have a great rest of your week. And we'll see you on Saturday for another Whiskey Musings Broadcast. Good night, everybody.
The Whiskey Musings Broadcast is produced by Active Eye Media, LLC. All rights reserved.